it well. Played it very, very, very well indeed.
No more slices for you.
Oh, look at that for judgment.
You'll learn.
So this is episode 18 of Slice, but of course it is actually the 19th Sliced episode, the 20th, in fact, if you include the little teaser we did for various podcast platforms. But the reason we are no longer on our sort of numerical schedule is that last week we spoke to Mike Lorenzo-Vera for a bonus interview. If you haven't heard it, please do go back and listen. I know we would say this, but he was such good value, wasn't he, Sam? I could have chatted with him for a lot longer, and a couple of the clips have been picked up actually by different golf news outlets and a few sort of golf Twitter personalities. So it's resonated, but I really hope people go and listen to the full interview and not just the social media clips, grateful as we are.
Yes, I like to go and make little clips to sort of try and hook people's interest, but it was one of those, actually. It's the first one I've done where I was really struggling to choose which clips to put up there because there's so many good ones. But I didn't want to at the same time, I didn't want to put out like 12 clips, which I could quite easily have done. I mean, it was one of the few podcasts of ours, no offense, Ben, that I've actually listened back through in its entirety because I was interested enough for listening back, So,
this is phenomenal. I listen to every episode more than once every week, so that's an insight into our egos, isn't it? Yours.
That's why I listen.
Mine.
That's why I listen. Numbers are so good, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, you did a very good job choosing the right clips. I think the one, no surprise, that the one about him trying to replicate Tiger Woods' shot in Mexico is probably the most popular. But there's loads in there. I like the stuff like that you won't have been able to clip. For instance, like he talks about the influence of Mr. Alathabal, as he called him. The reason that Crons is such an important event and why he's gonna retire there. How unlucky he was when he lost to Matt Fitzpatrick. And I have to say, after we spoke to Mike, I went back and reminded myself of that and Qatar and some of his near misses. And he's been on the wrong side of a bit of bad fortune late on in a couple of big tournaments. But yeah, a fabulous career. And you and me will both have that circled in the calendar, won't we? Cron, Mike Lorenzo-Vera. We can dream.
Yeah, we can. I did actually have a sort of cursory look at sort of flights to go out there because I thought it would be awesome. It is a tournament that I'd love to go to. Coupled with that, the fact that he's playing his last ever event, it would be really cool. I don't know whether I'll be able to swing it for various reasons, but yeah, it'll be great. And I love the fact when he talks about the fact he said, I'm going to be drunk all week or something. It's brilliant.
But yeah, Crons is a really good tournament if you want to get drunk all week. I gather that, for some players, that's kind of I once heard a story about Peter Uihlein and Brooks Koepka there, which I shall not repeat. Let's put it that way. But they had a good time. They had a good time.
Really interesting. Okay. Yeah. I'll have to ask you about that off
well,
air.
It's pre-watershed, Sam. We're recording this at 9 a.m. on Monday, so I'm afraid I simply can't.
Fair enough. Well, I'm going to take us into a review of last week's events. And we'll start with, obviously, it was a week off of the DP World Tour. So I'll start with the PGA Tour, the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, which Scottie Scheffler won by 8 shots, 31 under. It's the joint lowest total in a PGA Tour event. 8 shots clear of Van Rooyen, who himself was very impressive. What did you think, Ben? Did you watch much of it?
No, I'm afraid not. And that's become a recurring theme lately, hasn't it? When you ask me if I've watched much since the Masters, I've not really watched a lot for one reason or another. But look, from a bettor's point of view, it's obviously a bit of a shame that after we only had one event last week for me anyway, like DP World Tour, PGA Tour, we had one event that I preview and it felt like it was as good as over after Thursday. I always caution against that because there's a lot you still got to go and play, but it went very much as it looked like it would go from sort of the first 6 or 7 holes of Scheffler's round. Often because of that sort of selfishness of what he's done to our entertainment, we fail to recognise how much skill it takes, even at a rubbish golf course, even rain softened, all that stuff. It takes extraordinary skill to shoot 31 under par. Like your mate who plays off scratch, not like Scheffler's giving him 6, 7, 8 shots around and beating him around that sort of performance, like maybe even more than that. So a staggeringly impressive performance. And although to you and I and many other people, it might be the worst PGA Tour event of the season or nothing of real significance, the title's a joke, all that stuff. For Scottie Scheffler, it had meaning. And I'm glad for him that just as Rory McIlroy is an Irish Open winner, just as Bob McIntyre is a Scottish Open winner, to win the Nelson, bastardized though its title has become, I think that's a big deal for him. So that's great that he can tick that off.
It's one that he would have wanted to win, isn't it? Outside of the majors and the obvious ones. But the one thing I will say, I'm not a fan of Craig Ranch. It's not an inspiring golf course to watch on TV by any metric. But in its defense, the one thing I will say is if you look at the stats at the end of the tournament, 3 of the top 4 on the leaderboard were the 3 top strokes gained tee to green. So it does identify, good, but it's not a putting contest, which, often the low scoring events can be. So that's my one defense of Craig Ranch.
Yeah, and that's kind of been true actually throughout since it came onto the PGA Tour. Like low scoring often is mischaracterized as a putting contest, but remember the score in the end is determined by the par of the golf course. If that's a par 68, Scheffler's just won in 19 under, if my maths is correct. So you can adjust that however you like, right? The reason low scores every year happen at Kapalua is a par 73, right? If we made even Torrey Pines made that a par 73, all of a sudden it looks as difficult as say a Colonial or something like that. So par is not the determinant. Like the most difficult golf course on the PGA Tour are the ones where you have to hit the ball the highest number of times to get to win a tournament, right? So if you're hitting the ball 290 times and win the tournament, that is harder than if you hit it 288 times, but you might go lower to par. Anyway, that sermon aside, I do think it leads us anytime someone sees 25, 30 under, putting contest. Not always, and this tournament specifically, no way. I don't think the best putters won it yet, and certainly the best ball striker did yesterday.
Yeah, and let's talk quickly about Erik van Rooyen, who, I'm already been a big fan of his for a while. Obviously he had that emotional win, didn't he, in Mexico a couple of years ago. He's a guitarist, which I like. There's not many musician golfers out there. But his press conference after the round was fascinating, I thought, because he was asked about the fact that he's got into next week's event, signature event, and he basically went off on the fact that he doesn't like signature events. How he thinks, he prefers full field events. He thinks they're the strongest events. And then he went into, which I loved. He said, I've got the quote here on my phone. He said, I think this idea that we're worth what Premier League soccer players are worth is completely mind-blowing. I'm sorry, Jon Rahm. You're a fantastic player, but you're not worth the zeros they gave you. You're not worth more than Cristiano Ronaldo is making. I'm sorry, we don't have the following. And, he's right. And I think sometimes it's very easy for players who get into these signature events. Someone like, I know we sometimes dunk on him a bit, but someone like Wyndham Clark, as soon as he gets that level, suddenly he's absolutely fine with everything. He forgets the fact that he, almost lost his card, and now he's playing in these events all the time. And so for someone like Van Rooyen to get into the event and then still sort of speak out against them, I think shows a bit of character.
Oh, well, isn't it great? He can speak freely, for one thing.
Yeah.
I think that the second part of that quote may have been from a good while ago. So the way,
is that right?
Yeah. So he did say he doesn't like signature events last night, but the Jon Rahm element is something he said before, which is great because it means it's a consistency of opinion from Van Rooyen. I think a lot of what he says is absolutely bang on. The point around how much Jon Rahm earns, not just Jon Rahm, like most of them. Scottie Scheffler's career earnings are about 80 million now. It's just madness. He's been around for 5 or 6 years and he's earned 80 million in professional golf. It's too much. If you ask me, it's too much, even for him. But at least that comes from a reasonably organic place, right? It's money from a profit-making operation, from their big sponsors, because he's won tournaments. It's not comparable, really, with what Jon Rahm earned simply for shaking hands. And that's where the inflation in the game is just completely out of control and unsustainable. They can't keep, we've said it before, I believe truly they cannot keep doing that. So LIV have got to decide what they want to do. They've got to make some decisions. Do they lean into the team stuff? Do they go this route, that route? But what they almost certainly can't do is every 3 years say to John Rahm, here, have another £500 million. Please don't leave me. We'll see if they do that. We'll see if they do that. But yeah, I agree largely with what Van Rooyen says. The only caveat I would have is that we do live in the real world, and I think deep down there probably are too many professional golfers, touring professionals, and there's probably too much of a concern for how the lower ranked ones are supported in some way. I'm all for trying to look after people and make sure that they are secure in a cutthroat sport. I really am. I'm not trying to say, we should make people pay for money that doesn't even allow them to live a normal life. Absolutely not. They're playing in a high risk sport where one injury and they've got to go and find a job. So, but I do think, you think of all the tours worldwide, all the players, the very top level should be a little bit trimmer, I think. And the Wyndham Clark point around, like, he might have lost his card and now he's a major champion, I'm afraid that's just, for me, is something you have to accept.
Yeah, possibly. I think more the reason I brought him up is because I think he was very vocal when he got into the signature events about, he suddenly changed his viewpoint a little bit. Suddenly it was suddenly it was fine. But yeah, I mean, you make a valid point. There is definitely, and I think, to be fair, I think that's improving over the last sort of 12 months or so. That the players, like, again, and this is no offense to a particular player, I'm just picking a random name of someone like a Ryan Armour. Has been getting into a lot of events. I feel like he's getting into less now. So I think there is it's being, there are steps.
The opposite fields are stronger, and that's a direct consequence of signature events being so strong, but limited in field. For me, I know it's probably really oversimplistic, but why not? I think it might have been Kenny Kim, a popular Twitter account, who first sort of tweeted something along these lines, and I found it hard to disagree with, like, something along the lines of signature events being 100 players rather than whatever they are at the moment, 60, 72, whatever it is. They all have a cut. There are 100 players, no sponsor invites or very limited sponsor invites, a way to play yourself in. I think these Aon Swing 5, Swing 10, whatever they're called, is a good thing. But just a bigger number of people so you can have a cut. And you play in twosomes. You got, if you have 100 players, you can play in two balls in a split field. Play moves faster. There's still the cut in golf, in tour level golf, is so important. And I think the best thing Van Rooyen said about how much they're paid and whatnot was the point he made about golf being so cutthroat that on a normal week, half the field do not get paid.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is so fundamental. That justifies the big money at the top end. It's like, yeah, it is cutthroat, but if you're good and you succeed, you get rewarded. So that the cut, I think, is fundamental.
And it's unique to golf, right? I feel like I can't think of another sport where you can walk off without winning, without earning any money at all over a week. Well, in fact, making a heavy loss in many cases, because you're paying for your caddy, you're paying for accommodation, flights, whatever. Yeah, you may have some sponsorship money to back you up, but it's very unique to golf that you have that. And that's my biggest beef with the signature events, is the lack of cut. Yeah, I completely agree. It should be 100 players, but for God's sake, please have a cut, because it's just otherwise, this notion you can just turn up. You don't have to be all there. You can just, I don't know. I'm not a fan. But anyway, I think we're in agreement on that. I'm going to take us on to Corn Ferry Tour. So it was the Tulum Championship, Tulum, which I visited, which you'd never heard of. And it's Bryson Nimmer won. And actually, so Ryan French actually pointed this out, because I don't think the Corn Ferry Tour account actually mentioned this, but Stuart McDonald got into a playoff for Bryson Nimmer. So Bryson Nimmer eventually won, but Stuart McDonald had to hole out from over 100 yards on his last hole to get into the playoff. So apparently Bryson Nimmer was in the press tent, and he heard this massive cheer go up, and he thought that Stuart McDonald made an eagle to beat him, but he'd hold out from over 100 yards just to get into a playoff, which is phenomenal. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Bryson Nimmer is one of those names who's been, he's a good amateur. I think he plays out of South Carolina. Is he Clemson or? He's one of those who's just been, a bit of a trendy, below the radar. Well, this guy was meant to be good, and so far, to be frank, he hasn't been. So it was nice. I checked the leaderboard first thing this morning. It was nice to see that he'd won won a tournament and got his career really going, because this is his first win at this sort of level. And we joked about the Corn Ferry Tour last week not providing the right sort of tests for preparing players for the PGA Tour. And a bit of irony there that the PGA Tour, we had 31 under, and I think it was 9 under in Tulum, near of course, to Chichen Itza, Chikara, Eugenio Chikara, whatever it's called.
Yeah, one of my friends, Simon Hudd, offered to do a highest bidder based on wonders of the world, because Chichen Itza is indeed one of the 7 new wonders of the world. So, it could be a chance of me winning one anyway. But anyway, the LPGA, it was a Black Desert Championship. This is the same course that Matt McCarthy won on the PGA Tour last year, and Erik van Rooyen won. It was her third LPGA win. I didn't watch much of this, but one notable thing that did come out of this, Ben, was a slow play penalty. Obviously, this is a new rule that the LPGA brought in recently, and Chisato Iwai got a 2-stroke penalty for slow play. I don't know the ins and outs of how it happened or what the actual infringement was, but it is notable because Iwai actually went on to miss the cut by 2. So it definitely did the job. I would say.
Yeah, 2-shot penalty. I'm not messing around, so that's good to see. As long I'm sure they follow the protocols they've laid out, and I think it shows you that it's still going to be rare to have one of these. But hopefully the player in question will speed up a little bit. That's basically the aim of the game, isn't it? I do think the LPGA Tour probably has a bigger problem than the PGA Tour, so it's going to be interesting, marginally, and there are some mitigating circumstances, but it can be interesting to see how many of these we get. But yeah, just the other notable thing, I thought Esther Heinzlet was she second? Yeah, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but also I thought Ronnie Yin, to bounce back from last week and finish second herself. The winner won by 5 or 6 shots, didn't she? But Ronnie Yin, who 3-putted the final hole to miss out on extending the playoff in a major last week, she bounced back nicely.
Yeah, it was good to see. So the other event to mention, so LIV Golf was in Korea, which Bryson DeChambeau won, which is notable certainly with the PGA Championship just around the corner. Charles Howell sort of pushed him pretty much all the way actually in the end, finished second, and that was his first good performance in quite a while. On the back of this, Ben, I did want to ask you something. So I keep reading, I read this weekend, and I've also read over the last few months, this notion that Bryson DeChambeau is the most popular player in the world. I just wondered if I could get your take on that, because I see, and it's obviously there's different ways that you can assess popularity, but do you have any thoughts on whether that's true based in sort of fact? Or?
He's certainly popular, and he's certainly also with that divisive, and often the two go hand in hand, don't they? People or bands or whatever it may be, who become popular tend to attract a level of derision from somewhere else. People who rail against that naturally, or in his case, I think the divisiveness comes from the fact that he is. There appear to be many sides to him, if I can say that reasonably. Clearly he's made a real effort to go out and embrace fans and kids as well, and that's really good. And for those kids, the rest doesn't matter, really. Doesn't matter that he plays for LIV, doesn't matter that he's a crusher, doesn't matter that his politics are what they are. Whereas it might matter to me or somebody else, and it might not matter to somebody else. But all those things don't matter to kids, and that's good. And sometimes we should all be able to accept things that aren't perfect but are fundamentally good for the sport. I happen to think that he does what he has to do to present himself a certain way. I don't think he is necessarily acting in a natural manner all the time. Let's put it that way. And I think he's got a pretty spoiled brat side to him, to be frank. And I think we've seen that in a couple of his interviews since the Masters, when things haven't been going quite as well as they have before. But he's a phenomenal golfer. Is he the most popular in the world? I don't think so. And I think the only reason you could get to that is by saying, well, look at his YouTube numbers. But by that argument, sorry to go full 2025, but it's like saying Mr. Beast is more popular than Tom Hanks, isn't it? It's like, well, is he? Because
Yeah.
YouTube numbers are YouTube numbers, right? Bryson is phenomenally popular in certain circles, but he has a lot of people who don't like him as well. And I thought it was notable that anybody who was on the grounds at Augusta National will tell you that that crowd was pro Rory. And I would suggest that there are 2 or 3 golfers who are unequivocally more popular than Bryson DeChambeau. But he'd still be in the top 10, definitely.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about that, so you mentioned Rory at the Masters. So Dan Rappaport put out a poll on Twitter, and again, obviously, Twitter is a bit of an echo chamber, whatever. But he put out a poll before the final round of the Masters saying, "Who do you want to win the Masters?" It came out 68% Rory McIlroy, 32% Bryson DeChambeau. So that's interesting because obviously, you know, there are different dynamics at play. There's obviously people, maybe even people who are pro Bryson, still want Rory to complete the Grand Slam. But often they're sort of pitted against each other in a sense of you're either a Rory fan or you're a Bryson fan. Obviously, you can be both. You know, let's not be ridiculous. But I think it was interesting that it was so lopsided, and like you say, people at the grounds would have told you that Rory was definitely drawing the crowd. And I think it's largely because he had that history at stake, and it's something he's been chasing for so long.
Yeah.
For DeChambeau, it didn't really feel like it was such a big thing. So that's sort of just one way to look at it.
Popularity is flexible and can be interpreted in loads of different ways. And probably another good example would be Justin Rose. Like I'd say, Justin Rose, everybody likes Justin Rose, but loads of the people who actually probably like him more than they like Rory McIlroy would have wanted McIlroy to win the playoff. Actually, I'm a bit underwhelmed by 68%. I mean, how is that not 98%? That's ridiculous. But be that as it may, the other aspect to this as well, and it refers back to divisiveness. There are sort of 2 ways. There'll be loads of other ways, but there are 2 ways I think of that you could measure popularity, and you could measure it by total number of people who would give you a favorable rating or like you or whatever the chosen thing is, and just have the highest number. So if you do that for Bryson, you can probably get there because there are millions of people who love Bryson DeChambeau. But I'm trying to explain this. If you then take off one for every person who absolutely categorically does not like him, then obviously that number becomes down. And that's where actually Justin Rose would be more popular because he would have far fewer people who say, I love Justin Rose because he's not as famous, but he'd have nobody really saying, I can't stand the man. So that is a different, and that again speaks to this. There are so many different ways to measure popularity. I suppose the conclusion is anyone who's saying categorically Bryson DeChambeau is the most popular golfer in the world is talking nonsense.
It's a good point. I mean, we probably should move on for this, but I will say the last point, and I was looking at this this morning, and you're right. The first name I came to where I thought, who does everyone like and no one doesn't like? And Justin Rose was the first name I came to, and the one shortly after actually was Tommy Fleetwood. I thought, I don't think you could find someone who doesn't like Tommy Fleetwood. So I'd say that maybe he could potentially be the most popular player in the world if you're going by that definition. But anyway, you wanted me to ask about the Latin America tour, Ben. It's not one that we really tend to sort of mention, but yeah.
No, it isn't. It just struck me as notable as we'd made note of that LPGA penalty when I was scanning through the news today. A player called Hunter Walcott, who I don't know a lot about. He's been pro for 3 or 4 years, come out of Louisiana College, I think, University of Louisiana. He won by 2 shots, and he had a penalty during round 2 for slow play. So, to have defied that and won the tournament, it won't have happened very often.
No, that's interesting. I didn't even realize that they brought in such, penal rules as well. So that's
obviously there aren't many sort of impartial journalists covering the PGA Tour Americas, so there's not like an account of it that is not written by the PGA Tour Americas people. So they don't go into a great deal of detail as to what exactly led to that slow play penalty, except presumably playing slowly.
Right, I'm going to take us on to in the news. So a few things happened of note last week. So firstly, Collin Morikawa announced a new caddie. So Joe Greiner, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, who was obviously a long-term Max Homa's caddy, and then he was recently on the bag for Justin Thomas, who won the Heritage, and now he is Collin Morikawa's caddy. And I sort of wonder whether he's working his way through the US Ryder Cup team of 2023, but he's doing all right.
Yeah, he is doing all right. Interesting to know. It would be interesting to know whether Morikawa had been weighing that up for a while, or whether has he really just done that sort of ultra reactive thing of like, "Ooh, Joe Griner won with Justin Thomas, but then isn't working with Justin Thomas anymore. I'll have him. That'll work. But this is what happens when golfers go through prolonged periods of not winning. Often, actually, caddies are probably most vulnerable when things are going terribly or things are almost going amazingly. Like the guys who are just steady away, probably not so at risk. But a lot of caddy changes do happen, on every tour very, very regularly. But yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer for Joe Griner. If you're talking about best player in the world where their bag might be available, I guess a week ago we probably would have assumed Morikawa's wouldn't be. But certainly the players who are better than Morikawa have pretty permanent caddies. So this is about as good as it gets, really. It's been a nice month to be Joe Griner, hasn't it? And yeah, we'll see if it proves the spark. I mean, Morikawa's just been missing that little something to get him over the line. Often just a bit of bad luck. Russell Henley chipping in. It's not that complicated. He'll win again soon if he keeps playing well.
The Sam Allardyce of caddies. Is that fair?
Yeah, is he saving Morikawa from relegation? I don't know.
Right, President's Cup. So the captains for next year's event were announced last week. So Brandt Snedeker is going to be the USA captain, and Jeff Ogilvy will be the international team captain. I believe, certainly in Ogilvy's case, he's been a big part of the international team for the last two President's Cups at the very least, and that's definitely, they have a bit of a sort of succession going on there, where you're involved in the team room and then you eventually kind of get promoted to captains. I think Snedeker was also involved in last year's President's Cup. I could be wrong, but yeah, I mean, they're two respected players, two players who've played several of these events, and yeah, I'll go decent choices all around, I would say.
Yeah, I think Snedeker might have stepped in as a vice captain in Keegan Bradley's place in last year's President's Cup, if I remember rightly.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah,
I don't think you'll find two more sort of likable, affable, popular. Go back to that word popular again, but as captains go, I can't imagine these two feuding at any point during the week. They take life as it comes, and you wonder whether Jeff Ogilvy might secretly have hoped to get a home game, home in inverted commas, for a team that covers multiple continents. But yeah, it'll be a big task for him, but I'm sure that's been a big goal of his for some time, and it'll be really nice to have Jeff Ogilvy in front of the microphone several times over the next 12 months or whatever. He's just good value. Everything he says is worth listening to. So, and he's another guitar. I mean, this is a guitar themed episode. I believe Mr. Ogilvy would give Van Rooyen a run for his money.
I once asked Jeff Ogilvy via email whether he would join me on a collab. He never replied. But
that's a shame.
I mean,
try Erik.
Yes, I should try Erik. And I'd get Ryan Fox on drums. We could have a little band, get a little band going.
Foxy's a drummer, is he?
Yeah. Sorry?
Foxy's a drummer, is he? I didn't
He's
know
a drummer,
that.
yeah.
Oh, great.
Do you remember those?
Plays golf. I'd be worried you might not keep up, but
there was a clip that went around. This was during lockdown, I think it was actually, where Van Rooyen was playing something on his, playing some sort of lead guitar or something, and then Ryan Fox then was playing drums in his, in his house at home. So they were definitely, they're two accomplished musicians. So yeah. Right, LIV and the OWGR. So last week there was a lot of talk last week, wasn't there? That they were coming close to an agreement. Trevor Immelman then sort of spoke out, and he said that he'd spoken to Scott O'Neill, who's the LIV CEO, a couple of times, but he said it's just introduction stuff. We're in the same position we've been without any application from their side. The ball is in their court. So it feels like there's kind of a lot of talk about nothing.
Yeah, it seems like someone has caught wind that Trevor Immelman and Scott O'Neill have spoken and has taken that to mean that there's an application, that they're close and so on. And actually, Immelman, who is the chairman of OWGR, suggests quite strongly otherwise. I mean, I don't really see that there can be... I would like LIV to get OWGR points, to be honest, because I don't think it would do anything but quieten down some of the complaints that we have to suffer from the hard done by people of LIV. They wouldn't get that many because their fields are small and they're very top heavy. They'd get more than some PGA Tour events, I believe. I don't know that. I'm not fully across the formula of OWGR, but they wouldn't get what they think they deserve. but I would like them to get them. There are some problems, not just the 3 round. I think the biggest problem for me is the team element, and it brings us back to what LIV has to decide fundamentally what to do. I mean, yesterday in Korea, you've had the 1-2 on the leaderboard. They play for the same team, right? And it just doesn't. It's just not. It's one thing or it's another. And if you want to go the team route, good luck to you. But the problem that would create is I don't see why world-class golfers would want to go and not play individual golf. That would be ludicrous. And but as far as OWGR points go, we go back to that quote from Sebastian Munoz, which can always be sort of brought up, is that he has said that his shot choice was affected by the team leaderboard. And as soon as you make that admission, you're making it very hard to justify giving individual points out for OWGR purposes. Now, on the flip side, I think Munoz is probably embellishing a little bit and may regret having said that. John Rahm, I think, was speaking far more earnestly when he said, when asked about the team competition the week before last, I don't really think about it. And then I think he said he thought about it on the 17th when he had a putt. This is, the 53rd hole of the tournament. It was the first time he thought about it. And this is the point at which he knew he couldn't win. So, of course, his attention changes. I think that's more honest. And that's why it gives lie to the idea that this is a pure team competition. It just isn't. But until they completely get rid of the team competition, I think they've got a big hurdle in front of them.
It doesn't feel like that's likely to happen, though. Like, it feels like it's so intrinsic to...
You've just got another golf tour. It's supposed to be one of the points of difference, isn't it? And it's everything they've said about brand and growing the game, and the idea that Brooks Koepka spends his off season in meetings and so on and so forth. They've invested a lot in that.
Yeah, it's a huge part. I mean, that'll be like TGL, getting rid of the team concept.
Please don't even. It doesn't bear thinking about.
Next thing to talk about. So Rory was on the Tonight Show last week, and he brought up a couple of things of interest. So he got a message from Tiger Woods after his Masters victory saying, "Oh, welcome to the club, kid," which is nice, isn't it?
Yeah,
I enjoyed that. And he was most surprised by receiving a voicemail from Sir Elton John. We don't know what he said in the voicemail, did we? But he said, Rory said, "I didn't even know Elton John knew what golf was." It's a bit harsh.
It's a bit harsh, very harsh indeed. Yeah, it was nice. It's nice. I mean, it'll have been inundated from around the world, but it's quite a cool answer to the question. What was the most surprising one you got?
Yeah,
a voicemail from Elton John. I think as well. I didn't read it properly, but there was like no way you could call back. You're not having Elton John's number, but he's left you this message via some third party or whatever. I thought the nicest bit of that was, it was quite funny to me when Rory was talking about how exclusive a club this is. And he basically said, apart from me and Tiger, the rest are either dead or nearly dead. That was like the subtext. And it's just the way he went through it. He went, well, Gary Player, he's 90. Jack's like 86. And then it's like, me and Tiger. Basically saying he's almost one of 2 living people who have done this. But it joking aside, and I'm sorry if there are any elderly people listening to this podcast. But joking aside, it really rammed home to me how exclusive a club and how big an achievement that was.
I thought you were going to say it rammed home how old Gary Player was.
Well, look, he's doing well, isn't he? We know that he's beaten his age 1,000 times or whatever. Yeah,
is that what it is?
Whatever it is, he'll add a 0, won't he?
Probably.
Rory also mentioned his champions dinner. Sam, what did you make of it? It sounds meaty. If you're a vegan or whatever, you're not going to enjoy it.
Been into wild game recently, so venison, elk, stuff like that. God, I can't. Have you ever eaten elk, Ben? I think I've had venison before. I wasn't really a massive fan, but elk, that's a
never
rare
had elk. No, presumably it doesn't mean Steve Elkington either. I hate to go to the sort of lowest common denominator question, but come on, what your champions dinner? Can you give me an idea? I'm not talking specific. I don't want condiments. What sort of wheelhouse are we?
Condiments. Tomato ketchup. No, I would definitely. Well, I mean, I love a ribeye steak. That would definitely be in there. Or I may even just go for like a T-bone, and then you're covering all the bases. But I mean, I wouldn't describe myself as a massive foodie. I'm a big fan of Indian food, so I'll potentially put that in there as well. But you couldn't really have Indian food and steak. That would be a bit odd. But anyway, maybe I
No,
could.
probably not.
Maybe ribeye steak, jalfrezi. I don't know.
Good grief. Good grief.
What would
I was
you,
about to
what would
say
you
that
do, Ben?
Bubba Watson's was famously awful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Grilled chicken, mashed potatoes, and mac and cheese, I believe.
Yeah, that's bad.
And
That's
the
pretty
starter
bad.
was a Caesar salad.
Yeah, I mean, why would you
Oh.
choose? I mean, look, I don't mind. I like, I eat quite a lot of chicken, but you'd never choose it. You don't go to a restaurant and choose chicken, do you? Who does that? Grilled, especially
Bubba
grilled.
Watson does
I mean,
that.
it's plain.
Bubba Watson does that. Aldo had fish and chips, though, I believe. So, and Danny Willett obviously had Yorkshire pudding, didn't he? Which confused the Americans, which was great. Yeah, I don't know what I'd have, but it would be. I'd try and push the envelope a little bit. There's no mac and cheese on my champions dinner menu.
Good. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. Certainly
Yeah,
won't be on mine
exactly. I mean, people had been asking.
Maybe we'll have our own champions dinner after we have our match at the end of the season with our victorious fantasy game player.
Well, that
and
would be lovely.
maybe the following year, the person gets to pick their, have a champions dinner in the locker room at Sunning. No, what is it called again?
I don't know. Sunningford.
Sunningwell.
Like Sunningdale.
Sunningwell. That was it. Sunningwell. Yeah.
On that, it's the final day of the World Snooker Championship today. I did notice that they began their own champions dinner.
Oh, really?
This year just gone. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, first time that they've done that.
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah. There were some terrible outfits. Like, no offense, but the problem is when you've not got the ubiquitous green jacket to at least bring everybody into some sort of uniformity. I know, like Stadler goes mental with his tie, and John, I was going to say John Daly. Who am I thinking of? Anyway, some people, they push the boundaries a little bit. But the World Snooker one, you had all sorts. You had like navy trousers with a black jacket and all sorts. It was bad. But they're only just starting,
On the note of the green jacket, so I had a question about this, and I don't know if you know the answer, but I was talking to friends the other day, and I don't know how it came up, but they said, I thought you weren't allowed to take the green jacket out of Augusta National, but then you always see people like, obviously Rory was on the Tonight Show wearing a green jacket. What are the rules around when and where you can and can't wear one?
Yeah, I do know the answer to this, and I can't remember it. I've got a feeling they give you like a replica one or something that's not the original one, and the original one, or there's like a time period, maybe it's after a year or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Adam Scott took his back home to Australia, didn't he? But I do, yeah. I think there's a grace period or something. But you don't Jose Maria Olazabal isn't going for dinner in his green jacket now. I think that would be in the locker room. Let's find out. I'll find out for next week. You do all the work for this podcast. I'm going to find out the answer to that question.
I think that's. You've been a bit harsh on yourself there, Ben. You put a bit of work here or there.
I like to be harsh to myself. If you haven't picked up on that yet.
Right, I'm going to take us on to the world of golf this week, and we will start, as we should, with the DP World Tour. And the Turkish Airlines Open is back for the first time in a few years, and it is back at Regnum Karya. Apologies if my pronunciation is incorrect there. This is the venue which hosted it in 2016, 2017, and 2018, before it went back to the Montgomery Max in 2019. So we got 3 recent years to kind of look at course form-wise. We'll talk in more depth about that in our fantasy section, Ben, because I'll be keen to get your thoughts on the course and who it's going to suit and things. The next event to mention, which is a notable one, so the PGA Tour, it's a signature event. It's the Truist Championship, and this is at the Philadelphia Cricket Club, which is the first event is hosted on the PGA Tour. This is, of course, because it would be hosted at Quail Hollow, but Quail Hollow is the host of the PGA Championship next week. Philadelphia Cricket Club is an interesting one. So it's a Tillinghast design, Ben. So Tillinghast is the guy who designed clubs like Wingfoot, Bethpage Black, Battus Roll, several other ones. Have you got any sort of insight into this event and who it might suit?
Well, it looks a fabulous golf course for one thing. There's some irony. I know there are like logistical reasons and loads of reasonable things, but it doesn't stop me poking fun at the fact that we've got a major next week at a like off-the-shelf PGA Tour course. We've got a PGA Tour event this week at a golf course, which would be a brilliant place to hold a major championship. It probably can't. There are only 17 or 18,000 fans attending each day. There'll be logistical issues. But it does sort of ram home the realities, rather, of professional golf sometimes. But it looks fantastic. I read a bit of a primer from the Fried Egg. That's the first thing I do when they go to a great golf course. Go and see if the Fried Egg have profiled it. Andy Johnson of the Fried Egg, founder of the Fried Egg, was kind enough to reply to a message about the course and his take. And he sort of felt, well, look, if it's soft, and I'm afraid it has rained a lot in Philadelphia lately, he thinks the pros could take it apart because it's not a long course. He says it's not that challenging around the greens. And when you go back and read that Fried Egg article, one of the interesting things is that it mentions sort of wide landing areas off the tee. So all of a sudden you start thinking, okay, I mean, there are no long holes. It's just not. Well, there's a par 3 of 120 yards as well, which is great. However, on the flip side to that, they played the 2016 Seniors PGA here, and Bernard Langer won in 1 over. It was really, really windy that week. So it seems that this course will be made easy or hard by the weather. And on that, the last time I looked, there was the promise of wind in the middle of the tournament. So hopefully that keeps them honest. But it looks a visual treat. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, the only pointers I had, and I haven't really got much on this, I'll be honest. So it's a par 70, which always makes a little bit of a difference because obviously there's less par 5s. It's pure bent grass throughout, and the guy who sort of redesigned it or renovated it or whatever, a guy called Keith Foster, he also did a renovation at Colonial Country Club. Now, it's not going to be as sort of suffocating as Colonial. It's not as tree-lined as that, so it could be different. But it's similar length. It's also par 70. There may be something in that. I don't know, in all honesty. So I'm not going to sort of say, go and look at Colonial form because that'll give you your winner, because I'm not sure it would. But
you might not be far off there, to be honest, because as well, the work at Colonial did involve a lot of tree removal, which is what they did here when they restored it. There are still trees here. It's not a tree-lined course in the classical sense, like a Firestone or something like that. The only thing I'd say about Tillinghast, because a lot of people go, right, okay, let's go and check winged foot, let's go check Bolter's roll, and so on and so forth. It was interesting to read Gil Hance, probably the most prominent designer and restorer of golf courses of his generation, say that the great thing about Tillinghast is that he doesn't have a style, that it's a chocolate box of different styles and influences. And only other notable thing, no course so far this season has had more bunkers than this one.
Yes, that is notable actually. I saw that it's the highest. Pebble Beach is second, isn't it? But it is some way ahead of Pebble Beach. So that's interesting to see. So the next event to mention, PGA Tour has got a opposite field event, which is the Myrtle Beach Classic. So it was the inaugural one was last year, which Chris Gotterup won. Any sort of brief comments on this one, Ben?
Brief, yeah. Last year I thought this might be like a slightly longer version of Harbour Town and Copperhead and things like that. Actually, power was really important in the end. Like Gotterup smashes it. Him, Ryan Fox, and Alistair Doherty all hit less than 50% of fairways and finished like first, second, and fourth. So that I thought was really interesting. Like even there's like a 630-yard par 5 that I thought, well, no one will reach it into, so it becomes a good hole for the shorter hitters. But actually, they hit it. If you can see this on YouTube, they hit it that way and then like that way. It's like the Bay Hill 6 hole at Bay Hill, but on sort of steroids. It's crazy. They almost go back on themselves. So actually, players were hitting 240-yard drives and 300-yard second shots. Those who could. So I think long hitting will be good. And it's last week's tournament, the Nelson. Because of the rain more than the course dynamics, the rain in particular made that a bomber's paradise. Like it was such a power-heavy leaderboard. And Chris Gotterup played well, and so did a few others that played well at Myrtle Beach last year. So I actually think it might be the simplest explanation is right in front of us. Like last week at the Nelson, if there are low-ranked players who emerged from that tournament feeling good about their games, if a little inferior to Scottie Scheffler, they could be the ones to look at.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe I haven't checked these in the field, but maybe Nicholas Norgard could show up.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like that. That sort of event. There's not much else to go on. There was an amateur event here a few years ago, but didn't really help last year. And I think long driving, the weather could play a part because we're in South Carolina. There are exposed parts of the course. It can get windy, but I think Gotterup. It's not just Gotterup. It's the fact that you've got like Bo Hostler. He hits it all over the place. Alistair Doherty, Ryan Fox. There were loads of them, and there was only really Jorge Campillo who was different. and it's like 1 out of the top 10 was an outlier.
I hope for Alistair Doherty's sake that it's not a shit putting contest or whatever it's
Indeed,
called.
yeah, indeed.
So just whisk us through the other one. So the Hotel Planator is the Challenge de España. You had some comments on this, Ben, I believe?
Just that they've moved to Fontanals, and that if you go on certain databases, you might not find anything there, but it's hosted stage 2 of Q School for the last few years. And obviously there are loads of players who played at stage 2 Q School who will be in this field. Now, I haven't looked at the field, so these examples might not apply. But for example, Sam Jones finished 4th at Q School, Sebastian Garcia, Hayden Hopewell, Soren Brohoff-Lind. They were all in the top 10 at Q School here a couple of years ago. So if you go to the DP World Tour website, hit Q School, hit history, you can toggle through and you might find some form clues that aren't everywhere.
Some good info, Ben. We like that. Right, just very, very quickly, I'll mention the other events that are on. So the LPGA is the Mizuho America's Open, not Mizuno, Mizuho. I don't know what that is. And it's in New Jersey. The Ladies European Tour is back out. It's one of the Aramco Series events presented by PIF. That's in Seoul, South Korea. And the Asian Tour is one of their international series events in Japan. So very quickly, our player tracker, Ben. Elvis is not playing this week in Turkey, which I was slightly surprised at. I don't know why he's sitting this one out, having already, obviously it was a week off for everyone last week, so I thought he might be playing, but he's not. Ayora is in the field, though. And thoughts on his chances?
Yeah, I hope to see a bit more from him now. It's been a slightly underwhelming couple of months for various reasons. As we said last week, he missed a big chance to be playing a good course in China. One of the notable things about this course, really, and I know we're going to come to it, is that it does actually provide options. Like for a resort course, I think it's pretty good. So I imagine he'll try and attack it. And if he has a good driving week, he could do some damage here. He'd definitely be more comfortable here than a few of the courses he's played over the last few months. So yeah, interesting. And like you, I mean, Elvis would have been right towards the top of my shortlist for this.
Yeah.
So it's a shame. And Afi Barnrat as well. Where's he? Why is he not here?
There were several players that I looked at and I thought, I like the look of, and I thought they're not in the field. I was like, why are you not playing?
Yeah, strange.
I really don't know.
It's the best DP World Tour event we've had since the Dubai Desert Classic for me.
Yeah.
And that's another thing to say. Everyone gets a game. It's not co-sanctioned. So everyone from Q School and Challenge Tour, it's great. This is May to October is where they will really define their seasons. So it's great. But I'm amazed that players like Elvis and Afi Barnrat aren't here. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, we go straight into our fantasy game update and our picks. So quickly to mention, our leader is Garvin Howarth. Lewis Blaine is in second place. Obviously, there wasn't an event last week, as we talked about. So, Ben, let's have your fantasy picks.
I have to say, I had to go back to square one because I wanted Afi Barnrat and Elvis Smiley. So I'm afraid there's been some last minute tinkering, and I don't want anyone to take too much from this if you're listening, because this episode's going out way before my preview. We're recording early, so please don't take this to mean anything. It doesn't. I'm languishing in something. Anyway, Hao Tong Lee is like the chalk, if you like, in American terms. Runner-up to Justin Rose, should have won it. Runner-up as well to Ollison, wasn't he, or close?
To Ollison, yeah, correct.
Yeah, so he's been playing very well all year. So obvious. Adrian Ategi, he's quite interesting. Played well here. Sort of golf course he can compete at. Started to putt a little bit better. 3 of his last 4 performances have been good. You must have him because you're smirking. Jaden Shaper. Jaden Shaper's a really good one for this course, but he's had a quiet couple of weeks, so we'll see how he gets on. But I there's more to come from him this summer. I've gone with Martin Kuvra, who's just playing so well. Your lookalike is having a great time of things. Like maybe his caddy is not very good at measuring, and I don't know if we'll get proper strokes gain information this week. If that will shed more light, but his long game looks great. Curveballs, Alex Levy and Marcus Shinner.
Oh, okay. Yes. I like the latter because I've joined you on in. The reason I was smirking at Ategi is not because he's in my team, is I was doing a bit of research earlier and he obviously popped up on the leaderboard in 2018 here. And I looked at his Wikipedia page. And do you know what his nickname is?
I don't know, the UAE Golden Boy or something?
Would be
the
good.
Valman. I mean, the shotgun start call it the Valman, which is
Valman.
great. Yeah,
I
great
Is that where it came from? It came from
Yeah,
Shotgun
yeah.
Start. Right, okay. That's actually now on his Wikipedia page. So yeah, that's the
It's
Val
right
man.
up there with Piss Bear for Thorbjorn Olesen, but I think the Val man is I think it was Brendan. I think some of his finest work that year.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So my picks are: I've got Adrien Sadier in there because he's playing brilliantly at the moment, current form, 19th, 3rd, 5th in his last 3 starts. I have got Sam Bairstow, who's my captain. And this is purely because when I look at the players who've done well here, certainly people like Hao Tong Lee, Olesen, Rose to a certain extent, these are players who are good drivers of the ball and good putters. And if I think that combo, I think Sam Bairstow. And I'm certain he's going to win this year. And I realise he's the player I've used the most in my fancy game. In fact, after this week, I've only got 1 use left.
Wow.
So I've really burned Bairstow. So I need him to come good before I use them up. The other players I have in my team, so Connor Syme, I've got on my team. I know you're a fan of his, and the reason I've put him in is because he won the Turkish Challenge on the Challenge Tour, Hotel Planner Tour in 2019. Different course, of course, but coming back to Turkey, who knows? Maybe it'll inspire something. And he's been playing on and off some good stuff. He has missed his last couple of cuts, but it's a little bit of a outside one. Laporta, similar reasons really. He's been playing some good golf, and he was runner-up to Syme in that same event. Kinnold, I've joined you on, as I mentioned, solid course form here and played well last time out. I think he's one of these players. I think you probably agree with me, Ben. He's proven that when he gets in the hunt, he can win tournaments, and I like that about him.
Yeah, and I think as well, like he probably wants a very specific type of golf course, or a group of golf courses, and he played really well in the China Open. Then I think he missed the cut quite badly in Hainan, but that is just bombs away, and he can't really compete on those courses generally. It's also one of those. There's a couple of players, now I'll go into this more in my preview. A couple of players I liked whose form just seems to follow Thorbjorn Olesen's. And Kinnold's one of those. Like all the golf courses Olesen likes, Kinnold seems to like. You think, I won't go too much more into detail on that, but I don't know, it could be nothing in it. They're different players, but I do think he's one who, you get a good price about him this week, and he'd be on my radar. I think of the 6, he's the most likely, but there's no betting out at the moment, so I can't say anything for sure. He's the one who's most likely to make my staking plan of those 6.
Okay, yeah, and my last one that I mentioned is Andreas Halvorsen.
Oh, I like that.
And this is again just because he's a good driver and a good putter. It's just that combo which I like at this course, and he's someone who obviously he had his medical extension, which he sort of earned his card back. And he's been playing well since then. So it seems like a really solid player. So
I like that. He has done well this year, and look, I do think it's an event where it'd be hard to overcome a poor putting week. So that's why Ategi is probably one I'll have to think about again. But it's a resort course. The rough generally isn't up, and if the greens aren't firm, it'll be quite easy. But actually, they had really good field. Justin Rose was world number 1 when he won here last time, and they weren't going crazy low, were they? So it could be a decent test. We'll see.
I didn't realise that Rose was number 1 when he won it. I knew he was playing well around then. But,
he was world number 1. So
notably weaker field, I must say, than it was in 2018. Obviously, it's a different time of the year, and there's all sorts of things at play. But that did strike me. Right, highest bidder, Ben. Now, I will say before we go into highest bidder that we are running very low on highest bidder topics. In fact, this is the last one I can find in our inbox. So please do, if you have any good ideas for a highest bidder topic, please do send them in. Otherwise, we'll just have to call it a win for Ben, which would be tragic. I know. But right, are you ready for this, Ben?
Yes.
Our topic this week is from Gareth Fenton. I think you sent us one before. Since Jack Nicklaus won the last of his 18 majors by winning the 1986 Masters age 46, there have been 14 majors won by 12 different golfers over the age of 40. So 14 majors won. So there's 12 golfers who've won a major in their 40s.
How many can we name?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going early, and I know I'll struggle.
I think I'm going to struggle as well. I've got 4 there, Ben. What have you got? 8?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Let's hear them.
Els.
Yes.
And, Mickelson.
Definitely.
Zach Johnson.
Yeah.
How many do we say?
You said 8.
8. Ludicrous. I don't know how old Sergio was. Darren Clark.
I don't think Sergio was in his 40s.
I didn't commit it to an answer.
No, sorry, you didn't. No, okay, fine. Darren Clark, yeah, that's got to be good.
Darren Clark, good. Tiger Woods.
Mhm.
Okay. 40 plus major
3 more.
champions. How many did I say? 8.
Is that 8? Yeah, you need 3 more, Ben.
And this is since 1986.
Yeah.
Okay. This is doable still. I can salvage this. If I can just think while talking. That's the problem. It's a podcast. You have to keep talking.
That is the problem.
The hardest thing.
I mean, there's some that I don't know. I can only really think of one more that you haven't mentioned, and I'm not even sure that they were necessarily in their 40s. I think they were, but I'm
so obviously I'm weighing like Adam Scott definitely wasn't 11 years ago. He's not 51, is he? So Sergio was one I was thinking about. I can't think there are any more Masters champions because it's been a young man's game lately. So that's the Masters. The Open we've got Xander, Brian Harman, no. Cameron Smith, no. Collin Morikawa, no. Shane Lowry, no. Francesco Molinari, no. Jordan Spieth, no. Henrik Stenson.
Was he in his 40s?
Yeah, surely.
It must have been
I
close.
think he must have been 40. So then we got Zach Johnson, no. 2014, won the Open. Rory, no. 2013 was that? Have I said Phil? Does Phil? I can't have Phil.
You've said Phil already. Yeah, I think you only get him once. You're right. Stenson was 40, so good. But
Stuart Sink can't have been 40 like 16 years ago, can he? Because he's not 56 when he beat Tom Watson. I'm going to give myself till I've got a minute and a half here. Old major champions from before then, like Hamilton, Els, no. Ben Curtis, no. So I've kind of exhausted my open options in there. But I'm wondering about someone like Mark O'Meara. But I don't think he was. But I'm going to say Mark O'Meara, right? You might have to Google it. That would take me to 7, right?
Yep. I'm just double checking this.
I don't think Mark O'Meara's right, to be honest with you.
So 1998, and he won.
17 years ago. He's got to be older than 57.
Yes.
Surely.
Yeah, he's 68.
Oh, come on. That's brilliant. Right. Good. So now I'm thinking like Calcavecchia. Can I have Calcavecchia to speed things along? And then we'll see. And that's my mulligan. And if I'm wrong, I don't know what I'm going to do after that.
Calcavecchia, so he won in 1989. And he's now
6 years ago.
He's 64.
So close.
Yeah, unlucky.
So close. Right, so my last one, I'm going to say... I thought I was wrong. I don't know.
You've done so well here, Ben. I feel bad if you didn't get the point.
I'm going to give myself 10 more seconds. Tom Lehman, but he wasn't, was he? He just looked a bit older. He clearly wasn't in his 40s.
I'd be surprised.
I need to think of people who might have died.
I'll be surprised. He won it in 96. He is now 66.
Yeah, so he's 37 or something. Yeah, never mind. I gave it a good go.
Well, I don't know if I can pick up a point, to be honest, because the only two that I can think of, and they may be way off, and I'm terrible with age, I'll say. The only two that I can think of is Angel Cabrera when he won the US Open. Yeah.
Well, he'd have been older, and he's not. He's only just turned 50, hasn't he?
See, in my head, that doesn't feel that long ago, but it was a long time ago, wasn't it? Oakmont when he won. And then the only other one I've got is Paul Lawrie, but again, I'm not sure that he was in his 40s.
So just very quickly, Paul Lawrie was far too young, I'm afraid. Payne Stewart was 42. Ben Crenshaw, when he won the Masters in 95, was 43. Tom Kite, US Open, 42. Hale Irwin, 45. Raymond Floyd, 43. I've not gone back.
These are all old ones. Yeah.
It looks like I got all the recent ones. I nearly said VJ. I just didn't think he was. He was 41, 21 years ago. He's 62 now. Wow. A good effort, but nobody gets any points.
I got to say, Ben, that's a phenomenal effort. I feel bad that you haven't got any points there, really, because I think you did very well. Next time, just say one lower. That would be my advice.
Well, I need to start playing the game a bit more and waiting for you to say 4 and then say, well, I'll do 5. But that's not the spirit of the game, is it? It's not the spirit of the game. The Davis Riley Memorial highest bidder is played in the right spirit.
Well, we're rapidly running out of time. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week for our regular episode. Join us then.